Happy Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. All right. So I am super excited to talk about practical emptiness today. And you might be like, what the fuck is that? So I'm about to tell you, okay? Um, I am going to get on to the Facebook group here so that I can see when you are asking me questions because y'all know that Facebook gets all weird. It doesn't show me shit sometimes. So there we go. Okay. Today we're jamming on practical emptiness. Okay. Okay. If you're showing up, send me some hearts or some say hey or what's up so that I can see that you're there. Okay. So, emptiness. People are like, oh, I want to have a deep understanding of emptiness, right? Emptiness is this very sort of intense wisdom topic within Buddhism, right? And it's really easy to get lost in the abstractness of it, in the intellectual masturbation of it, right? But I like to really think, how is emptiness applied in the everyday world, right? Because what doesn't work is when people do some kind of spiritual bypassing and they're like, oh, you know, this doesn't matter because ultimately we don't exist. Or this doesn't matter because ultimately it is empty of inherent existence. And, like I used to have this one teacher that told me, there's so many people that are into tantra, right? And this idea within Buddhism for many new tantric practitioners is like, oh yeah, like, well, there's the like monk and nun shit and the layperson shit, but I practice tantra, so I do drugs and I just have a bunch of sex with random people, and because it's all empty, right? Like nothing is good or bad. But that's like they just spiritually like they skipped all of the steps that it takes to get there. Like, and so my teacher would say, well, if you think that you're ready for that, then you should also be able to drink piss, and you should also be able to eat poop. You should also be able to have sex with someone who's totally like not attractive to you if you're ready for that in the very real way. Like, you have to have an actual realization of the emptiness of things. So I think it's really premature and a sign of the spiritual bypassing when people are saying things like, oh, it doesn't matter because in the end it's all empty. Okay? So what do we do with this concept of emptiness in the meantime? And by the way, I'm not saying that I totally understand emptiness at all. That's like some serious progress there. What I do know is what I'm about to talk about, which is how I apply it in a practical way to my everyday life. Okay. So when we take this concept of emptiness, we can have this ultimate reality, right? Of, okay, this is ultimately where things are. Ultimately, this doesn't um, exist, of ultimately it doesn't have inherent existence, right? But then there's the reality that we are sitting in this world with the body. People call me Anna. They are like reaffirming that I exist. What do I do in this manifestation, in this aspect of reality? The ultimate reality of emptiness, and then the relative reality, and how does emptiness exist in this reality for me? Because I can't just walk around being like, it doesn't matter, I don't exist, what are you tripping on? Hey, it's just your karma. And ultimately, even that doesn't exist, right? So, what do we do? Oh, hey, Melinda. Melinda out in New York there. All right. So, I like to think of emptiness on a day to day level as circumstances are neutral, right? So, when shit happens, we take it from a state of neutrality and we apply with our minds and our thoughts from our minds that something is positive or that something is negative, right? So when we can accept that circumstances are neutral, then we know, okay, if I am suffering right now, I am creating that with my mind, with my thoughts, right? So this is like a huge, huge practical realization, I think. And it shows up in the model. Like you may have seen me do the model. Let me grab this right here. So this is what we do, in Freedom School with my clients when we're trying to work through our shit. One of the tools we use a lot is this model. And so we have circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. So the circumstances are neutral. We interpret them with our thoughts, which then leads us to have feelings that drive our actions and creates our results. You get to have my chicken chisel writing. Okay, so the circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. Okay, so the circumstances are neutral. What does that mean? It doesn't mean, like, for example, if we take patriarchy, it doesn't mean that patriarchy doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that patriarchy doesn't have some, real shit going on. It doesn't mean that, patriarchy is empty per se. So there are facts, right? We have facts. We can have facts within a neutral circumstance. So if we say here, patriarchy, like it has some definitions, right? Like systems in which X, Y, and Z occur, in which, we have lots of data about how women get paid compared to men, etc. So, it's a structure, right? There are facts about it. Now, some people think patriarchy is a good thing, right? Like some people are like, let's get even more patriarchal. Oh, the old days when it used to be so patriarchal. We love that shit, right? That is like, that's an example of how patriarchy is actually neutral. So it exists. There are facts, there are structural aspects, institutionalized aspects that are true facts. But what are our thoughts about those facts? So, on another sort of an advanced level, we could play with the idea that patriarchy is a thought as well, right? But if we look at it just from the factual point of view, like what is the definition and, what are the structural facts that we can look at that define something as a patriarchal structure, that's what I'm talking about in the context of a circumstance, okay? So then how do we feel about it? Right? Like I said, some people have the thought, me likey patriarchy, right? I have the thought that it sucks, right? But our thought creates our emotional experience of the facts, right? Poverty, right? There's a definition of poverty, right? Even better would be to write down just how much the annual income is, because that poverty can be a loaded word, just like patriarchy can be a loaded word. So we can write in, like 20K a year, right? And we see that, and someone can say like 20K a year with 3 kids or something, right? We see that and we can have thoughts about it. And someone in one country might think, bring it on. Like, I'm cool with that. I have 3 kids, give me 20K, I'm going to chill. This works for me. And other people have thoughts like, why me? Why am I stuck in this circumstance of poverty? Right? So we can have thoughts that impact our feelings, that then drive our actions and create our results. So practical emptiness is not saying that shit doesn't exist. It is saying that the facts of the situation are neutral, because people can interpret it however they want, right? And people do. There's hardly anything that people agree, like all people agree on, right? So, and I mean, we can go there. Like, when I go to like advanced coach trainings and stuff, I used to host these gatherings at them where I'd say, let's go and let's try to take this down. Death. We all die. Is that a fact? Do we all agree on that? And there are some people that don't think we do. And there are some people that like put themselves into like freeze things, into the freeze chambers. And then they're just like hanging out, waiting for like the fountain of life cure, right? It's in suspended animation. So, there are very few things that we can say everybody agrees to this, right? So we take facts that are neutral, that are empty of inherent qualities, and we apply qualities to them with our minds, right? With our minds. So I can think that's enough money. I can think that's not enough money. I can think I am never going to get out of my situation. I mean, I can have all kinds of thoughts about that amount of money per year with 3 kids or something, right? Patriarchy, we can have the thought, well, I'm fucked. I'm never going to progress in my career. I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm never going to be able to get to where I want to be. Or we can have a thought that's there and I am going to rise above that, right? So can you see how the circumstance, the facts of the circumstance can be neutral, and then we put thoughts onto it, right? That we get to choose. And what I invite you to explore is we don't necessarily need to have like we don't necessarily need to choose a negative viewpoint because it will drive results that don't serve us, right? Seeing a circumstance as neutral does not mean condoning it. So seeing something like patriarchy as neutral does not mean you're down with it and cool with it, okay? You get to choose if you want to see that as a positive thing or a negative thing, right? So if you're feeling resistance to this, like, oh, I don't want to see that as neutral because it's not. If I say it's neutral, then that makes it okay. That's not what's happening here. What's happening is you're seeing the facts of what is happening within patriarchy, for example, within poverty, right? And you get to decide what that means to you. So this is going to exist no matter what you think about it or not. You thinking differently doesn't make it disappear, right? So when we don't resist reality and we go, okay, these are the facts. This is how much a woman makes compared to a man in the same fucking job, even though she's equally or more qualified, right? That's a fact. If we pretend that that doesn't exist, right? We're not solving the problem. But we can say, oh, poor me, I'm in this fucked up system, wah, wah, which what? Perpetuates the fucking patriarchy, right? So we could also say, yeah, that exists, and it's not going to define me, and it's not going to define my world. Which perspective gives you more power? Which perspective helps you make a change? We often think I have to get angry. I have to hate. I have to fight in order to make a change. But the reality is when we can accept, not condone the fact that something is happening, that those facts are for reals, we can choose a mindset that is, okay, I see this and I am going to choose a perspective that better serves me that feels better than fight, 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 right? It's empowering. It's I've got this. It's ZG, right? That radiant inner confidence. And then we can more effectively change the system. Now, when I say, not fight, 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 I don't mean just sit there and go, oh, and patriarchy exists, and I'm okay with that. I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine. I'm just saying that's not what you have to do. That's not what I mean when I say stop resisting. What I mean is let's stop fighting reality. We see the facts for what they are, and we choose the perspective that better serves us, which is pretty much going to be, for me, one where I, in these circumstances, feel empowered so that I can then change what I need to change to create the life that I want to create, right? In the serenity prayer, what do they say? Like, accept the things I can change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? Shanti Deva in the Bodhisattva's Guide to the Way of Life. If you can change something, why be unhappy? If you cannot change something, why be unhappy, right? So if you can change something, awesome. But beware of the mindset that we have to fight, fight, fight in order to change. Now, sometimes we do need to get our warrior shit on. We need to warrior up. We need to get out there and do the thing, right? But so often people think that's the only way. There are skillful means. There are times when we need to have that Kali energy, that Durga energy, right? Where we're just ready, going in for the destruction to create space for the new. And we can balance that, right? So all I'm saying here is be mindful of what you're choosing, because from a practical emptiness point of view, the circumstance is neutral. It is. Those are facts there, right? In my podcast that's coming out tomorrow, I talk about, how I love when people challenge that circumstances are neutral with these really kind of dramatic events, right? Like 9/11 or genocide or something. It's like, how is that neutral? And again, what's happening there is people are often saying, if you say it's neutral, it means you think it's okay. And it's like, no, you can think what you will like. I choose to perceive that shit as wrong, right? But other people don't, which means the event in and of itself does not have those qualities. If they did, everybody would see it the same way. Like, what color is this cap? It's black. Okay. Everybody kind of agrees. Who knows? Maybe someone's got something wrong with their cones and rods and things, and they may see it as different, but right, different, factual, right, or good or bad, positive or negative, right? So can you see? So in these horrific circumstances, the event can result in people dying. The event can result in destruction, right? But the event, the facts of the event are neutral. And that is because not everyone sees it the same way. Right? But play with this, because when you can see this, you can see that you create your emotional experiences. This is when my teacher said, you can be happy just like that. That's what he meant. You can just choose to perceive it differently. You can choose to see your current circumstances as different. Because why do we suffer? We suffer usually because we want shit to be different than it really is. We're like, why can't you be like that? Or why can't my work be like this? Or why can't my bank account have these numbers in it? Right? That's why we suffer. We can release ourselves from suffering when we see this practical emptiness, right? When we see that this circumstance is neutral and I can choose to see it the way I want that better serves me. I like to choose perspectives that give me a sense of empowerment, that cultivate compassion in me, that help me make the world what I think is a better place, right? And let's be honest, what I think makes the world a better place is like the opposite of what a good chunk of Americans think makes the world a better place, right? Like, and so those are the facts though. So what can we do about it, right? So again, no spiritual bypassing, not like, oh, it doesn't matter who's president in the end because it's all empty, right? No, 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 no. The facts, we take the facts, we see them for what they are, we choose our thoughts about them. We can assign positive, we can assign negative. Whatever we assign is going to drive our emotions, which then impact what we do or don't do in the world. So this to me is the practical emptiness, right? This to me is how we end up using this concept of emptiness and applying it to our day-to-day lives. Like Michelle said here, the patriarchy is a great subject to test our neutrality and choosing our emotions. If it's neutral, we can choose to not let it limit our experience. Exactly. She says, some people feel guilt or shame around being able to feel neutral about events. That's horrific, the cognitive dissonance. I love how empowering that piece of information is, that regardless of our perception, our emotions are our choice. Exactly. Because, and I just want to emphasize this again, just because you accept that something is empty of inherent qualities does not mean you're condoning it, right? It doesn't mean you're saying it's okay to go and do. It's acknowledging the neutrality and how your mind determines your emotional experience, which ultimately creates your reality, your experience of the world. At one master training I did, there was a woman who stood up and she said, what about the death of a child? Like, that is for sure. Everybody agrees that's fucked up. Like if your own kid dies, right? And it's so maybe easier to fall on the whole, like, well, some people are crazy. And if so for them, they may not think it's a bad idea. But there was actually a very poignant moment when a woman stood up and she said, well, actually, I want to speak to that because my son died. She said, my son committed suicide. And she said, and was not for me what you're experiencing. I experienced an immense sense of relief because his level of suffering in life was so bad and so challenging for him that when he died, I felt lighter and this sense of relief that finally he was at peace, right? So there's so many situations that we can assume are loaded with the qualities of good or bad, right? And it's so common because in our culture, we get, or even like not in our culture, if you study like yoga, right? Like there are things that are tamasic, things that are rajasic, things that are sattvic. But ultimately, those are all, in this relative reality. And like I was talking about way earlier, when my teacher was talking about, all these people all of a sudden deciding that they're tantric practitioners, it's like when you cultivate this reality, like those qualities don't exist. They're neutral, right? We can ultimately do with them what we want. But you have to have that realization first, because in the meantime, that's not going to happen. That's spiritual bypassing, right? So if you are resisting this, I highly recommend you play with it. Find me a situation that someone else doesn't think differently about. Find me a situation that really there is no other way to interpret it. and you won't be able to. So if you think you have one, that is so good because we should work on it. You should post it in the Rebel Buddhist Facebook group. You should tag me, and then we should jam about it. Not with any shaming, not anything like that. Like, I encourage this, right? I encourage you to challenge this and try it out for yourself and see what works and what doesn't work. And if you can find something that is not neutral, right? That doesn't have your thoughts all about it. If you can find some facts out there that aren't emotionally loaded with your own thoughts, let's jam about it. Because if you can find something, I would love that, because it would be so juicy for me to reflect on that, right? But I've done this so many times with really intense topics with, other master coaches, and it is a very powerful experience. So I really want you to explore that. Let's see. Michelle says, we need to have compassion for ourselves when we have emotions we didn't choose. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm teaching a mindful self-compassion class right now. And, we look at it like, here's our center, right? From our center, we can see circumstances as neutral. If we are in the midst of some crazy shit, it is a lot harder. When we are in fight, flight, or freeze mode, it is a lot harder to be able to see circumstances as neutral and how our thoughts create our feelings. We're like, no, I don't think so. This shit is real and it sucks, right? We're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. So we're not in our center. We have all these layers of stress that come out, right? And they take us away from our center, right? Maybe we get triggered. Maybe we have a past traumatic experience and we get triggered. And we go out here to fight, flight, or freeze. You go up to a person like that and say, your circumstance is neutral. Like, you best duck, right? So what we need to do, what brings us back to center, is self-compassion. This is why I spent a whole month on it in Freedom School. It's why I teach it. I'm doing a class right now. The mindful self-compassion brings us from out here to in here so we can do this work again, right? There are, I was going to say episodes, but there are some past videos from Wake the Fuck Up Wednesdays where I talk about this, how to give soothing touch, soften, soothe, and allow. And I do talk about that. So you could try to find those earlier on. But having compassion for yourself in the moment of suffering, recognizing this is a moment of suffering, right? I'm suffering right now. I'm not in the space to be able to do this. I'm going to offer myself. Oh, yes. Shauna says acute and chronic physical pain. That is one place that is juiciest for exploration. Yes. I have talked and heard stories from really experienced meditation practitioners, like from the sort of original crew of bringing it over to the West, right? And when they have had severe pain, like from cancer or something, they say, I didn't do so well with that. Like, even after decades of practice, right? Yes, it is juicy. All right, y'all. I got to go teach a class. I hope that was helpful. If you are wanting to chat about this more, post it in the Rebel Buddhist Facebook group and tag me. Okay. Bye. You're welcome.